Good morning. Hello. Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever, wherever in the world you find yourself, whatever time zone you're in. Hope everyone's having a pleasant weekend. Few of the regulars already here, so hello, welcome. AC15, Luke, Kieran. I think I got that right. A few others. Yeah, wait for people to filter in. A few different things about this stream today. Excuse me. First of all, I'm based on the suggestions from the last stream. I'm trying to dual stream to Twitch, which on my preview of my Twitch channel is just it says live in a black screen. So I feel fully confident that I've set that up correctly. So we'll just see what happens there. YouTube Studio has just said there's also an error, so that's exciting. So hopefully everyone can still see me. What's going on? But yeah, see how it goes. You show us offline on Twitch. Fantastic. I have literally no idea how Twitch works. I downloaded a plugin that said, install this, it's really easy, and you'll go straight to Twitch. How does one... I'm not going to spend ages doing this because it's not really the point. I don't know how one goes online. I just assumed as soon as you have done that, put the stream key in. I just assumed as soon as it received data, it'd be like, cool, I'm here. There's no button that says go live that I can see. YouTube format is TikTok portrait. Oh, is it? It shouldn't be vertical. Hang on, because I didn't want to do the vertical stream. I thought I disabled that, so apologies. Maybe refresh the page and see what that looks like. It should just be in normal full screen horizontal resolution. That's what OBS is set up as. That's what I'm streaming as. I don't know why it looks vertical, so apologies for that. Let's have a quick look. You don't do this for like a week, and then everything. It's like real software. Everything just stops working if you don't look at it for a week. But we can live debug this. Small. Okay, not off to a great start. Let me. Settings. It's worse. Appearance, stream, output. It should all be set to 990. Oh, thank you, Luke, for that. I will respond to that. I'm just trying to set up the stream first. Oh my goodness, I see what you mean. I've just logged onto mine, and it is indeed miserable. You can't even see my face. Right. I'm going to stop the stream and try again. So bear with me. Apologies. And I will respond to you in a second, Luke. To me, now it's in landscape. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. Oh, I've just refreshed. I've refreshed YouTube, and it's working. So, if you see me in teeny weeny eye strain vision, smash that F5 button. I'm going to give up on Twitch. That's a problem for another day. Okay, I think we're there. Thank you for bearing with me. I tried to change one thing and inevitably changed the thing that I didn't want to change. But here we are. So my day job is a developer. I used to work in cybersecurity a long time ago, but now I don't. I work in a totally different industry. I've worked in a couple of different industries. My main focus really is on, internal training. I manage our sort of graduate and internship programs, so I get to spend a lot of time talking and teaching C++, which is what I really enjoy. And then I make sure that I kind of keep my skills up to date by doing stuff like this outside. So yeah, that's kind of a hopefully not too doxing insight into my life. Oh, I'm glad that you're enjoying this little slice of home out in the US. Whereabouts in the US did you land up? I've done small like secondments to the US before and been around a bit, so I'd be kind of interested to know where you're currently studying. One of my interns who's just finished came from did a year in Penn State University. Okay, so I want to try something different on streams for a bit because the hacking framework has been fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's been going for quite a few months now, and not only am I way way behind on editing them as videos, it's kind of got most of the features I want now. Obviously, it's one of those things where we could just keep adding more and more features and keep probably streaming ad nauseum, but I want to kind of do something a bit different. Oh, cool! Michigan State. I've never been. The something, not the cheese state. That's Wisconsin. The something state. I'm sure someone knows. But yeah, I want to try something a bit different. So also, as I want to try and broaden my reach a bit to Twitch, which has clearly not worked today, I want to kind of start off something new on that as well. So I put up a poll a while ago for people's projects because I thought it'd be fun just to go through some other people's code today, and I can kind of give my constructive criticism, my thoughts on it. It's purely in a friendly and helpful manner. Maybe we'll pick up something new along the way as well, which is always interesting. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to start going through that, and I've got some ideas for sort of more broader projects to do on stream going forward now that we're kind of winding down the hacking framework a bit, which hopefully will be deep and interesting in the world of C++. So hopefully I remember, I'll kind of go through that at the end. So I had a couple of responses, so thank you very much who responded to it, and apologies if I never got back around to emailing you. I've just sort of picked one that I think has kind of the broadest appeal and is kind of a good inaugural project for the session. So thank you very much, Greg, who I've seen is already in the chat, so thank you for coming along. Hopefully this is useful. So I'll read out his description of the project, and then we'll start picking it apart and going through it. So it's a C++ cross-platform game engine and editor for PlayStation Portable, PSVita, and Windows called Xenity Engine. I assume I pronounced that right, or Xenity. I think that's really interesting because those are wildly different platforms. I am not an expert. I've never programmed for PSP or PSVita before. I'm going to assume they're possibly some sort of BSD base under the hood. Whereas Windows obviously is not, apart from the networking code which they stole from BSD, copied from BSD, but those are very different platforms, so it's quite interesting to look through that. The engine is based on the game object component system, similar to Unity 3D. I've never really used Unity before, but I'm having watched many game devlogs, have a passing familiarity with the concept. Xenity supports 3D and 2D rendering with lighting, real-time compilation, audio, networking. So it's quite a lot. And then in the further details, Greg said this is his first C++ project, having done 3 or 4 small C projects before. Most of the skills were learned with this project. He's a student in game engine programming, and this is his first game engine. So sounds great. I've written several game engines before. My audio has issues. We can't hear you. Is that true for everyone? I'd be surprised if I got this far and only one person's complained. I can hear you. Audio's fine. I think by sort of the law of numbers, I think Caesar, the issue might be your end. But I do apologise if it's. I don't think I have any influence over that. No worries. But it's always worth checking. Otherwise, it could just be. I'm forever paranoid that it's just now me going, and no one says anything. So yeah, let's go through it. I've downloaded it. I've kind of deliberately not looked at it really. I was kind of going fresh. I thought we'd just try this totally anew and see how it goes. So inside the project, I have a README, raw assets, and then an engine. So SLN. So this is going to be a Visual Studio project, and then something called executable. I don't even know if I have Visual Studio installed. But it doesn't matter. I'm kind of more interested in going through the code and the mechanics of it all anyway. So let's have a look at the README first. Always a good place to start. So again, cross-platform engine, blah, blah, blah. We'll discuss this. Supported platforms, Windows, PSP, Vita, and then you plan on supporting 2, 3, and Linux. So that's quite a wide range of supported platforms, which I think is going to have some interesting challenges in terms of like cross-platform code, especially around like networking and file systems and stuff that might be very specific, threading, something that might be very specific to the to each platform. What's interesting as well is like there's no mention here of what C++ version this is, because I don't know the tool chains for PlayStation. I suspect they don't yet have a C++ 20 compiler, and probably even going back as 2, I can't imagine they keep that updated. You've said it's C++ 20, so that's exciting. So brilliant. Let's hopefully there might be some ranges, some coroutines. We'll see what we got. List of features, which I think we've kind of covered. Skyboxes, scenes. So animations is always an interesting one. So definitely reach back out when you do that. You've got 3D physics, but not 2D physics, and hot reloading. So we're definitely going to have a look through some of these. Warning: the engine is not finished. I don't think anyone's personal engine is ever finished, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. Nice, interesting list of like some of the issues you might come across. If you want to compile the game in the editor, you have to change blah blah blah. So interesting, some useful bits about how to build it, and then how to use it. Cool. And then some information on how it works internally. Each file has a unique ID, classes original file, like texture, audio, clip, blah blah blah. License, always useful. And then this is nice. So it's got links to all the stuff that you use in the versions. I think that's really it's kind of useful to know. Okay. So having no idea where to start, I'm just going to start like how I would just approach a brand new code base. So just sort of start feeling it out. So I'm going to assume like the engine is where the code is. So let's just go into that. Okay, so we actually also have a CMake file. So that's interesting. So CMake minimum version and project. So this looks like a top level CMake file. So it might mean we can actually try and build this, which would be interesting. So I don't know, maybe you support both CMake and Visual Studio. Visual Studio now will actually just take a CMake file for you, so you don't even need one of those miserable Microsoft XML SLN files. I wouldn't consider myself a CMake expert, so this is definitely a CMake file, and there's definitely stuff in it. But I can see it creates an executable from some sources. Right, interesting. So we get the sources and the includes. So that's fine. That's cool. So I personally normally start off with looking at includes. Just because I find that the header files it's the interface you provide to a user, right? Especially if you're writing an engine, you're in theory writing code that you want other people to use, and at the bare minimum, you can give someone a compiled library and some header files, and they should be able to use it. So I like to start looking at headers. I think it gives us an idea of the interface, and then we can kind of dive through the source code. So let's have a look into include. So we've got some third party. So this might just be third party includes. Correct me if I'm wrong. In which case, I'll give out like random advice as I go along with how I would do it. If this is the case, I think naming this like third party or vendor or your word of choosing just makes it a little bit more obvious, because just as a quick glance, these all look like projects. So yeah, I mean, that's not a problem, but let's go back up to, let's go source then. Okay, so now we've got the source, and it looks like you've got potentially the header files and the source files together. It's not a problem. What I'd say is that when you're building a library, separating out the includes and the source files is advantageous, because again, if you want to ship it to someone, you might want to just ship them a built library and the header files that they can use it with, rather than also the source files. So having them as two separate directories kind of facilitates that a little bit easier. And what I would actually recommend you do as well is have something like include and then the name of the project, Xenity, and then put all the files, all the header files in this, because that way what you can do is you can ship someone this top level directory, and then it just reduces name clashing, because then when they include it in their project, they can reference all of your files from Xenity / I don't know, editor slash whatever, Xenity slash Xenity dot h. It's kind of like a namespacing thing for includes, because if another project, because if you're building an engine, right, someone in their game might need to use other third-party libraries that you've not provided, or in addition to what you have, and you don't want there to be a clash. So assuming there's like a vector class in here somewhere, or a sprite or whatever, sprite.h, you don't want your sprite.h to clash with someone else's, so you can kind of namespace your library includes this way. Anyway, that's kind of by the by. Let's start having a look into this. So I'm gonna let's first have a look into the Xenity.h. Let me know if the font size, because I can never remember what font size I leave it on the stream, and then funnily enough, when I sort of code day to day, I don't leave it on jumbo size. So if this is too small, let me know and I can embiggen it. Okay, so we have some vectors, which is interesting. Mono behavior, so that's probably C# bindings if it's a mono engine like Unity is. Again, guessing a lot as we go along. Nicely grouped includes. This looks like a top level. Okay, so this is like a classic top level header file. So you include this and you get everything. There is nothing wrong with that. The only issue with that is it can potentially increase your compilation times, because every file, every translation unit that includes Xenity.h then has to process all these and bring them in and compile them, even if they're not using it. I know it's up to you whether you want that or not. But for ease of use, it means I can just download this, build this library, and then I can just include Xenity.h and I can kind of get going. So this is kind of broken down nicely. So what we'll do is probably start picking through some of these. So I'm going to start off with what I'm going to assume is like a leaf node in your hierarchy of classes and components. I can't, let's look at some of the math stuff, because I think it's kind of interesting to start with. It's not used in the engine itself, but user can use this included in the game. Okay, fine. So that was in, I saw it and then I forgot. So let's go into engine, and this seems to be where a lot of the stuff is. Blimey, that is a lot of code. You have been hard at work at this, which is really interesting. So I was going to start off with engine vectors. So you seem to nope, sorry. I'll get there in a minute. Right. So you've got a quaternion, a vector, vector 2, a vector 2 int, a vector 3, and a vector 4. I might have called this maths rather than vectors, just because quaternion is not technically a vector, but I guess it kind of is. I don't know, maybe I'm splitting hairs a bit. Let's have a look at vector2.h. First thing I see, comments, brilliant. I think documenting your code is such an underrated skill and discipline to have, and it's incredibly tempting when you're writing your own project and you're kind of working on your own to be like, I'm just going to write loads of code and not document it. So I think docs absolutely brilliant. Interesting. Okay, so you have probably rolled your own reflection, I'm going to assume. You don't want to wait till C++26 and the absolute madness that is bringing with its reflection token soup. So I'm going to assume this is part of the reflection stuff, and then you got standard, so default constructor, and then you take two values, kind of understandable, and then a fill value, which I'm going to assume is going to go to both, and then you can construct it from other ones that you've already got. Pretty standardized functions. What am I looking at? So this is this is very classic. I think most game engines have this. You'll be most classic object orientation, be have your members private, then have getters and setters. But for vectors where you're going to always be wanting to modify X and Y, it makes sense to kind of just leave them public. So I think so. I've written a game engine and it is not perfect and definitely needs some work, but I've done a similar thing. So this is interesting because this is how, although I haven't done it in my engine, I need to go back and do it. This is how I like to do operator overloading as free functions, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Although I think actually you might be missing out on one of them. I'm trying to think of the best way of kind of discussing this. Okay, let's do this. So there's a couple of things here. So if you use C++20, you can do these are all minor things, right? This all looks like good code. But these are, if you're interested in kind of maybe maximizing your usage of C++ and the modern features, there's a few things you can do. So you can do bool operator equals default, and that will in C++20 generate you a default equality and also inequality operator, which is just the inverse of that, and it just member-wise checks the equality of all those, so it's just less typing. Similarly, you can implement some of these in terms of some of the others. So if you have the for instance times equals, you can do return just turn that off. Return vector2. Oh no, I mean that's the float one, isn't it? Return vector2 temp left return left times equals. You can implement the non-assignment ones in terms of the assignment ones. Again, it's just less typing because you've kind of gone through the effort of typing all this out. Again, it just reduces the surface for bugs because you're just relying on code that you've already written. So yeah, again, it's quite a common pattern, is just to implement those in terms of the others. What I've noticed you've done here, so this is the classic issue with this kind of operator overloading, is that you want to be able to do vector2 v equals vector2, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 times 3, right? That seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to do. You want to be able to take this and multiply each of these elements by this number. So in order to do this, you've written this overload here, right? Which basically, what operator overloading does is it goes to the compiler and it says, hey, when you see this operator with these types, here's the code that implements that operation. Because what would be slower? I would put, if you're talking about the implementing one in terms of the other, I'm not a betting man, but I would bet the compiler would absolutely collapse that down. If that's not like a common pattern the compiler can pick out, I'd be very surprised. Anyway, but it's a good question. Like, we should always check these things, but I'd be very surprised if the compiler didn't optimize that down. So what you've done here is you've created this overload here, because the C++ knows how to multiply all of its built-in types, floats, integers, and how to do the type promotions between them, and when it can and can't do those based on narrowing and all that gubbins. So, but you can tell C++ like how to do additional multiplication with custom types, and that's what you've done here, and that makes sense. You said if I times it by this float, then here's how you do it. But the problem you have is that, well, I also want to do this. And then C++ is going to, if you just implemented this, it's going to be like, you've told me how to do a vector on the left and the float on the right, but I'm totally out. I'm out if you want to do a float on the left and vector on the right. So you have then had to provide an additional overload for that, but you can remove that need. In fact, actually, what you can do is you can drop both of these, and you can just use this one if you allow a non-explicit constructor with a single argument, because C++ surprisingly is on your side. Like C++ really wants your code to work. So when it sees something like this, it will go through all of its default multiplication operator rules, be like float times int, float times short, all that, and be like, don't understand those. And then it'll look at all the custom ones that you've provided and be like, oh, you've told me I know how to multiply a vector by a vector. But what the compiler is also allowed to do is it's allowed to do one implicit cast to make that work. So it's going to look at your 3 and go, sorry, let's make it a bit clearer. I'm being lazy. That's a float. Can I convert a float to a vector 2? Yes, I can, because you've told me how to do it, and it's not explicit. So if you make your fill value non-explicit, then you can just use this, and the compiler will just work it out for you. And in fact, if you then implement this in terms of the multiplication equals operator, you can get rid of all, you can get rid of some of these other ones, and you might find that a lot of this code just collapses down, and it's just less code. And I'm very much an advocate of less is more, or less code is better, at least less surface for bugs. So again, just something that you might find interesting. Again, I don't think none of this is bad or inherently wrong. Like it's code and it works, but just potentially opportunities for some refactoring if you're interested. Of course, you then do lose the explicitness of that, which means you do have to watch out that then this becomes valid code, and you basically have to decide whether you want that or not. Personally, for me, I always make single constructors explicit because I don't want this, except for in the case of stuff like this, where actually I think the advantage you get from the reduced overhead of having to write lots of operator code is actually worth it. But that's my opinion. Okay, let's keep going. We haven't actually looked at the source of this yet. So vector 2 CPP. I'm not going to go through the reflection stuff at the moment. This all looks fairly benign. If you use an initializer list, you don't have to use this. It's just like you only, and then you can kind of reserve just using the this arif when you truly have to disambiguate between local scope and class scope. I don't know. Other things you can do as well is you can implement some of these in terms of other ones. So if you did vector 2 fill value, you can drop all this, and then you can just call this constructor from this again. It's kind of, my philosophy is write the code once and then reuse it as much as possible. So if I've written a constructor, I'm going to want to reuse it as much as possible. So again, here you could do vector 2 vect3.x vect3.y, and it might sound like a little bit facetious saying, this one line is better than, is preferable to these 2 lines, but you can imagine in a class with lots of construction logic, it might be worth just trying to do it once and then reusing that for all the others. I'm not a big fan of C-style casts because they can be a little bit unruly. Only in terms of there's 5 standard casts in C++. There's static cast, reinterpret cast, dynamic cast, const cast, and then 4, and then C-style, and then you got the C-style cast, and they all. Oh, if you start using static cast and others now, yeah. So they all do different things, but they're all quite well defined. The problem with the C-style cast is if you look in the standard, it basically has a really good go at making that cast, and it'll be like, I'll try a reinterpret cast by removing the const, and if that doesn't work, I'll try doing a static cast with this, and blah, blah, blah. And the actual kind of rules it goes through are quite complex, and you risk not invoking undefined behavior, but invoking behavior you weren't expecting. Whereas if you just bite the bullet and write static cast, my view is static cast should be the default cast. That should be the one you go to first, because it will check that there is a either language or user-defined rule that converts that type into the other, and it will call the necessary code for it. And then all the others start getting a little bit like a little bit more niche. But otherwise than that, like I said, it's all good code. If you want to really impress your mates down the pub with your like obscure C++ knowledge, then you don't even need to use squirtf palf. You can just use stdhypot, and that works for 2 and 3 as well. And that will probably be about as optimized as it can be. Ccast don't care if it's unsafe, right? Again, like unsafe according to whom? I would. because I think it can try and do some sort of reinterpret casting, especially with pointers. Arguably, I would say that is unsafe. Yes. Yeah, and it's good. I like it. Right. What's next? I spent way longer on Vector than I thought I would, but again, shout out in the comments if this is. I don't know if this is your expectation or not, but this is the kind of like day-to-day C++ kind of stuff that I like going through. You know, these little like tips and tricks out will make your code hopefully a little bit easier to read, a little bit more maintainable. We'll try and go through. There's a lot of code here, which is great. We might not get a chance to go through like the full architecture of it, but we'll just. I'm starting somewhere, and I'm kind of working my way through. Would Ghidra extensions be eligible for live code review? I have never written a Ghidra extension before in my life, so we'll kind of probably have to figure it out as we go along. But I mean, never say never. I will repost it again soon, but there is a Google form that you can submit projects to that kind of allows me just to keep it all in one place. In fact, actually, how do I send? One. Hold on 1 second, caller. That's where I accidentally post a link to something that I did not mean to. Yeah, so. Okay. I think that's what I wanted. Let me pin that. Anyway. Hopefully that's useful. Oh, thanks. I watch a lot of Cherno's content. In fact, actually, I think he's one of the inspirations for me starting YouTube, because he was writing an engine and I was writing an engine, and I saw all the crazy views he was getting. I was like, I could do that. And now I don't write engines. Well, I don't do engine content anymore, but this is kind of fun. I think it's just, you know, if you've done C++ for a long time, you pick up a lot of stuff along the way, and I think it's just fun to kind of go through that. I think the only other thing I want to say about Vector, and I'm not going to dig too deep into it because, again, I'm sure there's other things to go to. Just, please, let me leave. Right. I would guess, although I'm not going to look too much into it, that Vector 2 and Vector 2 int are very similar, just with integers. So you might find that actually you can template that just to save yourself some code. Obviously, then it'll have to be all declared only in the header, but I don't know, you can, you know, maybe use some concepts and stuff to restrict certain methods if they don't make sense. But yeah, it might be a chance to reduce some code there. I'm not going to go through Quaternion just because I can never remember the maths. Okay, so what else? What else have we got? Let's have a look at. Let's have a look at graphics. I was just given a Dropbox link for this, so not at the moment. Okay, so we've got camera, we've got graphics, we've got an iDrawable, so presumably you're going for some sort of interface, which is great. I think I'm a big fan of like using all the features of the language and object-oriented programming, and you know where it makes sense. So that'd be interesting to look at. And then you've got icon material, render command. So I'm going to assume you're going to build up some sort of collection of render commands and hand those off to a renderer, maybe a 2D and 3D graphics renderer. Let's start with the camera. So you got play. I hope you're not looking for a review of any of the maths, because whilst I've done all the maths before for my engine, it was something I immediately went and forgot. So this definitely looks like maths. So this is a component, so we'll have to go and find what that is later. I'm assuming this is a component in terms of like the entity component system, is it dots, whatever it is in Unity. So you can kind of add a camera component to your scene. Dealer's choice. I don't tend to inline getters and stuff. I prefer to keep as much of the implementation in the CPP file as possible, because I just think it makes the header file. Remember, the header file is your documentation. It is the interface for your class. It describes what the, you know, if you think of a class as a black box, the header is the questions you can ask that black box and the answers you can expect to get. I prefer just to keep all the implementation in the source file. If a compiler doesn't inline a getter, then I think you've got bigger problems. This all looks pretty standard. And then you've got a whole bunch of friends stuff. Again, we'll have to try and pick out maybe some of the architecture later. Nothing inherently wrong with friends, but sometimes there are ways to kind of reduce the need for them. And then, so your camera inherently, presumably, has knowledge of your renderer because you can bind a frame buffer and update a frame buffer. So I'm going to assume that your camera has a frame buffer that it renders to, rather than maybe keeping those separate. So if I needed to render to a texture or render something else, maybe I'd have to create a separate camera for that, and then each one has the frame buffer. Again, I'm not an engine developer, and I'm kind of looking at a lot of this as I go along, but that's fine. The friend class is not a great thing in the code. Okay, well, maybe we can have a look. If there's any, oh, by the way, I'm glad that you're here for this, because if there's any, I should have asked at the beginning, if there's anything like specific you would like me to look at, then I'm happy to. Otherwise, I'm literally just going to kind of like feel my way through the code and just see what we get to. Let's look at graphics.h. 4 declared classes, that's fine. So static init, static stop, static draw. Okay, so these are all static methods. And then something for the editor. Let's have a look at the implementation. So when you initial, so I'm assuming the graphics, this is supposed to be some sort of like singleton kind of top level manager object. Like you at the beginning of the execution, you create the graphics thing, which you then kind of hang off. So my engine does something similar. I actually am not totally 100% opposed to the singleton pattern. I do a bit of maybe a controversial thing, but it's something, it's a design pattern, does have its uses. Because at least when you go to grab the graphics object, it's been initialized. Whereas here, like I, as a user, I don't know again what the flow is, might have to remember to call init, and I like to minimize the surface of mistakes for a potential user. And obviously you can document it and give examples and stuff, but it's just one of those things where if you can avoid forcing someone to have to call init, then I think that's a plus, right? And again, like stop, that could be in the destructor of the object, which kind of resets it all again, and unless you're expecting to call stop and then start again later. And then presumably you call draw. Because what you could do instead is actually, there's maybe potentially not a need for this to even be a class. These could just be a bunch of free functions, and then the CPP file can have literally, like you have all the, what you can kind of like, not globals, but like translation unit specific variables at the top, and then there's no need for like graphics colon in it. You could just have like graphics in it. That's fine. Like again, consistency is key, right? I think is like if you have a design and you're kind of comfortable with it, and then you're reasonably consistent, then that is in itself not a bad thing. Yeah, I agree. Singletons are kind of it's easy to use and easy to misuse. For me personally, again, I would put all these in an anonymous namespace. What that does is it restricts the linkage to just this translation unit, because when you declare it, you're just initial. Oh, sorry, I thought you were. Yeah, so stuff like this, like order benchmark, that symbol can still be referenced from other translations units. If they did extern stood shared pointer, was it profiler benchmark order benchmark? Have I got to disable copilot every time? They could get a link to this object from another translation unit, whereas if you stick it in an anonymous namespace, it basically says to the linker, this only exists within the CPP file and no one outside is allowed to use it. Again, not a big deal. It's just something that I was beaten into me in my first C++ job, and it's just stuck with me ever since. Yeah, that seems fine. So I'm interested in kind of use of shared pointers because I have opinions on shared pointers. Maybe we can come to that a bit later. So this is interesting because, again, I don't know the full context and I haven't seen where set skybox is used yet, but the point of a shared pointer is shared ownership of an object, right? So you allocate it. Actually, don't even talk about allocation. It's instantiated and created once, and then you can pass around this thing called a shared pointer, and it internally keeps a reference count. So every time you copy it, it increments it, and every time it goes out of scope, you decrement it. And then the idea that, sorry, someone just said that, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Twitch. I clearly have just I've not twitched today, which is fine. Maybe I'll just try again. People are following me though, so that's exciting. I've gained 3 followers with a black screen, so I feel like I've basically conquered Twitch. I'm pretty much ready to quit my job and become a full-time Twitch streamer. But anyway, so what you're basically saying is like the semantics that you're asking for is, I want to keep copying around a pointer or reference to this skybox object, and every time it's copied, I want that to go up, and then when the last person's done with it, last one out, turns the lights off and destroys the object. By passing a const ref, it's not inherently wrong, but you are kind of not getting the semantic advantages of the shared pointer, if that makes sense, because this will pass a const ref, so you'll get a reference to the shared pointer object, which means it won't increment the ref count. And again, it's not wrong, but what you'll find is that, for me, the thing with smart pointers is it's like unique pointer and shared pointer, because the advice has basically been beaten into everyone. You should use these everywhere. People think that they should then be used everywhere. They should really be used everywhere you call new and delete. If a function is just what I call like a peek operation, like it's just looking in, it just needs to have access to, maybe this isn't the best example because it does take a copy of it, but if this just needs to take, peek at the data and not take ownership or transfer ownership, then passing a raw pointer is absolutely acceptable in my mind. I think people should still use raw pointers in conjunction with smart pointers, where the smart pointer still constrains and models the ownership, and then you can kind of just give out that pointer to functions like on an ad hoc basis as they need to just use the data and not change the ownership. I've realized here that actually I think you've taken a copy of it, so maybe this wasn't the best example, but in this case maybe you could have just passed it by value and made another copy. It's just a small atomic increment. It's not going to make a big difference. To me, like when I see any smart pointer passed by const ref, it normally means that it's not necessarily code smell, but like there's opportunity for a better usage of the pointers. Hope that makes sense. I feel like I'm just calling these things. I'm just sort of going through these things as I see them. And again, so these are all benchmarks, so it's kind of hard to know where they're used, but like where else do you use order benchmark? So you reset it there. So you call start and stop. So as far as I can tell, this order benchmark, unless you are externally using it in another translation unit, is never copied anywhere. So I think this could be a unique pointer, like model unique ownership. You don't need the overhead of the reference counting, because in the C++ standard it has to be an atomic ref count. So again, you've got there's extra stuff that you don't necessarily need, and again it better models the semantics of what you mean. If this graphics static object is the sole owner of these benchmark classes, then I would argue these should be unique pointers. It's just semantically clearer when you look at it. This is what's going on. Again, do shout out if I've missed something. But yeah, then I think so. So your graphics clearly this is the kind of the interface into the rendering code. So you've got like remove LOD, remove camera, add LOD, remove drawable, add drawable. So this is the ordered eye drawables, pushback. Again, so this is the example. This is exactly the kind of example I'm talking about. So this is interesting actually for a couple of reasons. You've passed a shared pointer const ref, and then you've gotten the internal pointer out of it and stuck it in a vector, which is fine, but there's no reason you couldn't have just passed in the raw pointer anyway. Again, it's kind of semantically, well, arguably it's semantically clearer because you're saying if I'm passing in a raw pointer, I'm expecting the caller to not change the ownership, but actually potentially you are expecting a change in ownership because this is now holding a pointer, a raw pointer to your shared pointer disconnected from that. So if this shared pointer now goes out of scope, this will be an invalid, this will be a dangling pointer. Where's the ordered eye drawables? Ordered eye drawable. Ordered eye drawable. Where's this declared? Is it in the... Oh. Yeah, so you've got a vect. So in some other parts of the code, you're using raw pointers instead of the const shared pointer ref, and before ordered iDrawable was a vector of shared pointers, so you change that. Yeah. So again, like it's just something to be careful of, that you are effectively potentially extending the scope of your iDrawable object outside of the shared pointer, when that's the whole point of the shared pointer. I think what I've done before is have some sort of factory which produces iDrawables, and internally that stores them in a vector of unique pointers. Again, it's RAI, the memory goes out of scope when it's done, and then it literally just returns a raw pointer, and then the rest of the engine knows that that raw pointer is valid for as long as like the top level graphics thing is, and it's kind of you just pass around the raw pointer then, but without knowing, again, at the moment we don't know where that original share pointer comes from. It's hard to say for sure whether that's going to happen. I'm kind of interested in shaders, so let's have a quick look at the shader code. So this is a file reference and also reflective class. So point light variable. So I'm going to assume these map to the objects in the shader. I feel like you started off strong with the comments, and we've gotten this far, and they've kind of waned a little bit. So I'm going to infer a little bit from context. What I would say is, if you are writing cross-platform code, I would very much encourage you to use the fixed width integer types rather than unsigned int and stuff like that, just because and those are you've already got cease-to-int included. An integer is almost certainly 32 bits on every platform that you will use. The standard says it has to just be at least 16 bits. So in theory, you could have a platform with a 16-bit integer. I've never seen one. I've never worked on one. I'm sure one exists somewhere, maybe my toaster or something. But it's sometimes worth just being explicit with integer types, especially if you're going to be like, I don't know if you're going to be marshalling these to and from the shader code. I don't think that's the point of this. But anyway, it's less, it's slightly more typing, apologies. I think with cross-platform code, you're better off just using the fixed width integer types and then saving yourself a potential headache in the future. So you've got static point light variable names and member point light variable names, which is interesting. I don't know if you're kind of mirroring those so you can access them statically from a shader, but then what was if you have multiple shader instances? So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. But yeah, again, like, not again. So you've got this static in it, which is kind of strange because in my mind, you would have multiple shaders because you might have multiple shader files. So if your shader object is encapsulating a shader, I don't understand how you can have a static. You know what? Let's don't have to worry, don't have to wonder. We can have a look. So these can be vectors or strings, and then again, you don't have to worry about deleting them because vector and string are themselves RAII primitives, so they will handle the deletion for you when they go out of scope. So that just, again, it just saves a potential headache in the future. Classic Windows, do something different, please. You could even have a stirred array if you like. If these are fixed size, right? So there's no reason these couldn't be potentially just stack allocated. Again, I don't know. Without knowing, like, is this like, this would then become quite heavy to copy, and I don't, what the further uses are. But I think you can avoid using all the news and deletes here, and potentially getting yourself into a situation where you forget to do one or the other, or add one and miss copy and paste one or something like that. Again, here as well. So your init initializes the static ones. Okay, fine. So you presume you've got so if you've got like a pre-built set of like default variable names for lights and directions and spotlights, which you can kind of use ad hoc as you need, and then define custom ones maybe in the specific one potentially. The compiler will declare this for you, so you can just drop this from the CP file in the header file, or just do equals default in the header file. So that's interesting. So underscore point light. So this, as far as I can tell, is never deallocated. So this leaks, but not really because it's static. So it'll only you're effectively relying on the fact that the kernel will reap all the memory for you when the operation exits. When the process exits, sorry. But yeah, that's just something I noticed. Is again, these could just be unique pointers, then you wouldn't have to worry about it. Nice, if context pro. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I really wanted to do this for a while, and it's kind of nice just to sit down and just like, it's just fun. I think it's just fun just to kind of talk through code. So I plan on doing this a little bit more. I have 6 followers on Twitch now, which is exciting. So hopefully that'll pick up soon, and then we can get more people. Because again, more people who can send in code, like the more fun we can have. So if you're not got the OpenGL fixed function, so I wonder if maybe one of the PSPVita or PS Portable uses OpenGL the fixed function pipeline. So it's nice that you can kind of check for that, and then you're basically saying if it's not that, then only compile this code if we're not using the GL fixed function. So it's a nice use of context for if they're you're deleting the shaders. This causes PSVita to crash, bug on older version of VTG. There you go. I wonder if this is why you've got that. Sometimes I'm using int instead of std types. The first classes you saw, like point light used for an optimization trick to find shader variable IDs. Okay, instead of calling slow, so instead of going get attrib pointer or whatever it's called, or get, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've done OpenGL. That's fine. Is that why you store like I can see you store like character offsets and stuff into them? That's fine. So you've got read binary. So you're okay, fine. Yeah, so presumably this is a potentially non-null byte terminated read binary. Like, if it's binary though, what happens if there's a null byte in it? I guess it's shaded text, so you're expecting it to only be ASCII code. But interesting anyway. So this is string tag finder find tag. So what you in the shader code, I guess your shader code has like these special strings in it which you're searching for and doing specific things on it. I'm gonna hot take. I really don't like removing redundant braces. That's just a personal thing. I just only because there have been bugs before that have gone into production. Like iOS had a if you look up GoToFail, had a security bug which they think was caused due to a Git merge conflict error, because there weren't the redundant braces, and that is enough evidence for me to say that you should always use them. That is my personal opinion. You don't have to, but at least I would say be consistent. Kind of pick one and go with it. But that's kind of my hot take for the evening. I'm glad someone agrees with me. This is quite a big function. It might be possible to break up some of this again without diving too deep into it. It's hard to say. It's very, without comments, it's very hard to understand the flow of code in here. So load file reference feels to me like it's just going to be loading a file, maybe from a cache or something, which is what the reference is. But then it's doing a load of platform specific stuff. Maybe it's processing it as well. And then at the end you sort of like, might link, might not, depends on this. And then you've got quite a lot of nested else statements there, so it might be possible just to consolidate this or pull something out into like anonymous functions or something. And then I can't remember if all these aren't static, are they? My second hot take is that all braces should be on their own lines, but maybe that is a little bit more controversial. Fun C++, I'm going to say 20 trick here. You can use the enum shader type and then you can drop these off. Just again, less typing. Assuming your shader type is an enum class, which is nice. Yeah. So get render create shader type. Where's it load the set? Where's set shader data? Set shader data. Here we go. So that's in. Okay, fine. So you've got an OpenGL set shader data, and that does the GL source. Okay, that's fine. I was just interested how that worked. And now, oh, sorry, yeah. Set to the shader, 3D camera position. Okay, so your camera gets the transform, which again is a shared pointer. But I'd argue, does it need to be? Could you even return just a const reference to the data or just a pointer? Who knows? Personally for me as well, just less typing. So set shader projection, so all seems relatively standard graphicsy bits. I'm kind of interested in, was it in here? There was something about loading data, like specifically loading binary data. Where was that? That's always kind of interesting to see how people, it's one of those things which, is it binary? Read binary. I think it's always one of those things that there's normally a lot to say about it. Right. So you've got a project manager, file, database, bit file, read binary. Okay, fine. Okay, for some reason I don't have that. I don't know. I don't know where that is. It's not finding that. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed the Worms video. That was that's a real early one in terms of the game reverse engineering. Okay, let's leave that there for the moment. See what else we've got. So we've got through shader. Let's have a look at render command. So on the game hacking framework series, I chose to make the past live streams available for members and then cut up the actual technical content into videos for everyone, which I still think is a good idea, but it's just taken me way too long to go through them all. So for these, I think there's more value for people just to be able to rewatch these full live streams. So I'm just going to make sure that these are just going to be available to everyone after the fact. Also, because I want to review actual people's code, if they can't come along to the live stream because it just doesn't work out timing wise, it seems a bit unfair for me to review their code and then expect them to pay to get access to it. So I'm just going to make these available to everyone going forward. I might still cut them up into standalone content. I'm pretty sure that's like what the Cherno does, but we'll see how it goes. So render command as a transform, a material, a submesh, an iDrawable, and whether it's enabled or not. So that's probably what I was expecting if you were to ask me before this what would be in a render command. And then so here you go. Your render queue is a vector of render commands, and then a command index. So I presume you're going to move your way through those. Didn't like that anymore. So unordered map of uint64ts to render queues. So this is your render batch. So you've got you got a bunch of queues. So you're going to render your transparent meshes first, presumably. Hang on, and your sprites and your UI commands. So you're going to render non-transparent stuff back to front, transparent stuff front to back, and then sprites and UIs on top of that. I'm going to guess. I think that's a pretty standard way of doing it. I'm always interested in looking at any code from any old games. Obviously, I'm trying to play the YouTube algorithm a little bit, so the broader appeal the game has, then generally the better the videos do, and that's unfortunately just the way it is. But I do make a note of. Thanks for putting the file. I do make a note of all the games that people suggest, and I do try and get through what I can. I do have a contact email address on the channel as well, so people often email me getting video ideas and games and stuff, so do feel free to reach out. I think unfortunately it's just like the videos take so long to do, like the one I'm working on at the moment is taking me absolutely ages, and I'm still like not even broken the back of it yet, and I'm not you still be able to tell like a story at the end of it. It doesn't, just the way YouTube works, you can have the best technical content in the world, but unless you can kind of package it up into an engaging story, it just doesn't get as many views. So I'm kind of focusing on more popular games at the moment, but I would like to broaden out to sort of more obscure ones, because I still want to do videos that are just fun for me to do, not just ones that appease the algorithm, although they are fun as well. I'm a absolute stickler for making sure everything is the namespace scoped, but dealer's choice on that one. And then you can reset it. So for auto running queue, you're going to clear them and reset them. Yep, and reset that. Okay, so this is. I would argue this should just be a struct if this is all public. Again, this is more of a philosophical point of view. Structs and classes are the same thing. They just have different default visibility. What's the word I'm looking for? Visibility words. What they call public protected. Access modifiers. No, whatever. They're different default visibility. Get there in the end. For me, classes are things you kind of give to people, like as part of your interface generally, because you want to have methods on it, and you want to restrict access to the privates, and you want private members, and you want to make sure that you want to make sure that it's difficult to misuse by having a sort of very, the smallest possible interface as needed. And then structs tend to just be for bundles of data that you need modifying. And I tend to use structs internally because for me, as the owner of the engine, I feel I can trust myself a bit more than someone else to not make a mistake. So I'm more likely to have, if a render batch is used only internally in the engine, right? So if there's no interface, if there's no way for a user of the engine to get hold of a render batch object, then you might as well just make it a struct and have everything public and make your life a little bit easier. You can still have a reset method on it. And then you can do fun stuff like designated initializers. So you can do I could have a render batch RB equals, and I could do like dot transparent meshes dot sprite commands. Oh, Copilot's back. That's exciting. You could do that on structs. So it might make it, and then that means you can just kind of like, just have a something like that. Croissant. Like this. Again, if you're not giving the render queue to users, then there's no reason this couldn't be a struct. But I mean, again, this is all right. Solid. I think it's all really good. I think you've done a really good job here, and it's absolutely fascinating going through all this. I think more of my advice so far has just been around sort of maybe better usage of C++ rather than better usage of a graphics API, just because that's actually what I slightly know better. Okay, so let's go Vim source engine file system database. Here we go. bitfile.cpp. So what are we looking at here? So we've got a bit file. So I'm going to assume bit file means binary file. Let's see if we can get the header up for it. Oh, it's because I'm one deep in mvim and it won't go up one. That sounds like my problem. File system database bit file. Class that holds binary data. Okay. No, I'm not about spreading misery or negativity. I'd rather spend my time talking to people about code and how to make it better and how we can all learn something from it. So yeah, I'm not in the habit of just pulling up people's code and making fun of it. So this is interesting. So you've got create and you've got open and you've got add and you've got read and you've got a public file. I feel like this class here could maybe do with a little bit of a refactor, because for one, you've got, whether you know or not, a default constructor for you. C++ has made one, so I can do bit file. I can do this, right? And I've absolutely no idea whether you want me to do that or not, because I've not gone via your factory your create and open files. So what happens if I then do pc.readBinary, right? Again, if bitfile is an externally facing class that you expect people to use, you are leading open to misuse. So what I would suggest you do is C++, like one of the idioms is correct by construction. I would have a bit file, right, which has a constant string file, and then I would have some sort of file mode, which is open or append, which I assume, or open and create, or whatever is that, kind of going on there. And then I would take in a file mode and then just have the one constructor. There's no arguments then. There's kind of no ifs, no buts, no coconuts. You pass in the file into file mode. If you want to if you also wanted to be a bit more C++ 17y, you could have a file system path as well, if you so choose. Yeah, so looking at the implementation, yeah, so you already have a file mode enum, right? Write, create file, and read only. So I would just take that in the constructor, and add data. Is a bit of it's just strangely worded to me. I feel that should be called write. If it's a file and you're going to write to it, just add data, or at least append. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I think again here, this is very, very classic, right? You have to have that C interface because someone's going to want to use it, but really you want to use the C++ interface because it's easier. I suspect, without really looking too hard at it, you can do, and then again, it's all about reusing the code you've already written. Like, put all the effort here and then just reuse it. Just wrap. Effectively, this just provides like a nice C++, interface over on a slightly more C-based miserable one. And then you're actually using this file. So I guess this file does more of the I/O stuff itself specifically, yeah. And then it's just driving that file. Maybe this handles more of the binary side of it. This is again, this could potentially have issues down the line because you're returning a raw pointer and it's not obvious to me who owns that pointer. Am I expected to free it afterwards? Is this cached internally somewhere? What happens if I write to that pointer? Is it it's not marked as const. I feel like if you're reading data from a file, you're already I/O bound, and efficiency is probably not your biggest concern. So I would just return a std vector of I would uint8ts or something like that. Yeah. So if you have to free it, then that is a leak waiting to happen, because absolutely am I going to not remember to call delete on the function of this. Get C++, get the compiler to do it for you. All right, got a bit more time. Let's keep going. I'm enjoying this. Hopefully everyone's enjoying it. I hope the 7 followers on Twitch are enjoying it. Let's find where does file live? File system file. So let's go up 1 to file system. Oh, there's a lot in here, which is exciting. Oh, and async as well. Thank you for renewing your membership. I saw that pop up. Like I said, I will keep these code review ones as available to everyone, I think, just because, again, if I review someone's code in the future, I think it's a little bit unfair to accept them to pay to watch it if they couldn't make it. But I appreciate you being a member and renewing it anyway. It is very much appreciated. Only use malloc and pointers for memory leaks. Yeah. If you want a memory leak, you should absolutely use malloc. I totally agree with you. Malloc is for memory leaks. File. Oh, I'm glad you've been going through the old streams. So yeah, you've already got file mode. So this is interesting. So enable shared from this is a mix-in that allows a class that is in a shared pointer to effectively get access to the shared pointer it's in. The idea being, like, if I had a function in here which was... Oh, Copilot, go away. All right. Sorry, I'm going to change your naming convention to one that I like. return make shared file this. Okay, if this is in a shared pointer, this will not do what you expect it to do, which is presumably return a reference increased copy of the outer shared pointer. So enable shared from this is just a mix-in that allows you to do that. I think it gives you a method you can call, which will basically give you access to that. Again, I'm not sure if you're specifically using that or if you need that. I'm not seeing it anywhere, but these are virtual classes, so it's hard to kind of follow the full code through. But that's what enable shared from this does. Literally, get the share pointer from this. If you declare a constructor, then the compiler will not declare you a default one. So you could technically delete this. Again. Whether that's important to you or not. Don't remember why you're using shared from this. It's one of those things where it might have fixed a very specific problem you're having at the time, and then you either copied it from another class or that problem no longer exists. But again, like less is more, so maybe consider removing it if you don't need it. Did I start with Vim? I started with, like when I first started programming, I was like 14. I think I had Macromedia Dreamweaver, because I was learning PHP. But at university, I picked up Vim. People pick up all sorts of terrible habits at university. And then I've kind of basically just stuck with Vim ever since. I used Visual Studio VS Code for many years, 4 or 5 maybe, with the Vim bindings. And it's absolutely brilliant. I have no real complaints. I just wanted to go back to a pure Vim, NeoVim, and Tmux. Tmux is just so useful to me, and I couldn't quite emulate that in VS Code, so that's why I went back to terminal command line. And also with WSL and Wine and all those bits and pieces, I can compile Windows binaries and DLLs through WSL, so I can basically do everything I want on Windows and Linux just through WSL. So that's why I use it. So again, these are more what I would consider like common names for a file class. Read and write. You've got read all binary, read binary. Again, I'm going to assume these are returning you a raw pointer that you expected to free. Check if it exists. That's good. You can also do, I know it's virtual, but virtual explicit operator ball. I can't remember the specific runes for it, which then would allow you to do like if file or if not file, which is what the std file system, std fstream does, and maybe std file system. Again, like open is strange here because I would kind of expect the constructor to do the opening. Maybe I'm wrong. And close feels like it should be in the destructor. And then so we actually, what's an implementation of these? So let's go, what's file system? Oh, blimey, that's oh, so you used a file system, nice. What's going on here? I'm going to assume directory is an interface, which is why you need to dynamically allocate it to avoid slicing. But again, could it be a unique pointer? I feel like I'm missing some code. Okay, so take the path, return it. This seems fine. I feel like we spent a lot of time looking at like the utils and like the leaf nodes and stuff, and not too much of the graphic stuff. But hopefully this has been useful. I worked at a job not that long ago where I had to use C++03, so I feel you for having to go pre 98. That's file default. If you have a file which is is this an F stream? Yeah. So what you can do, file default. If you've got your file, you can do std string stream, and then do file. You can do stream file.rdbuff. And it means you don't have to worry about seeking to the end and getting and all that sort of stuff. I think this is about as fast as you can read a file in C++, and then you can just do stream.str to get it out. Don't quote me on that. I mean, that is not what I meant, because you can obviously go faster by just probably executing the raw syscalls. But in terms of like high-level C++, I think this is one of the least error-prone and convenient ways of reading a file, and don't have to worry about seeking and stuff, because seeking around files when they're like a binary or text, there's some weird corner cases. Hello, I am doing well. How are you? Yes, I realize I wrote dial. I do apologize. I can't actually type. Yeah, we got a little bit of time left. I'm going to start soon. So I was going to stop soonish. So let's have a little bit of look at the reflection, and maybe we can call it a day there. I've got to find it first. Reflection. There we go. Right. There's not that many files, so we'll see how we get on. I'm going to start off as always with the header files, because I like to see what the interface is. Okay, so you've got a variant of reference wrappers to all, presumably, the various types that you want to reflect. So your method of reflection is basically upfront, is to presumably upfront do the work in the reflection library for each type. And you've realized that you can't store a reference in a variant. That is some template in there. So you've got type spawner, which will allocate some memory, and then a templated. Oh, I see. Okay, fine. So you can return, because that's virtual. Fine. So it'll return you a new T for that type, and then a reflective entry, which has. What was the variable reference? Okay, fine. So that's the variant. So there's an optional variant for the variable, and then a type ID, and then a spawner. So presumably you're going to build up a bunch of these entries for each type in your class that you want to reflect, and then you can basically say, and then you can reflect out, this will be a reference to presumably the actual concrete type, so you can access it. And then reflective data is just a bunch of those. I prefer using. It's more modern. It reads better because it's left to right rather than weird type def right to left. And you can, if you really want to, you can template this. Not that you need to in this case, but I think there's literally, bold claim, I think there's no reason to use type def over using now. Class to inherit if you want to access child variables to fill variables from JSON to save them to JSON. So you inherit reflective. So you're going to say, I'm going to implement the reflective interface. Nice virtual destructor. And then you have to. Oh, so for my class, I have to basically say, here's how I get the reflective data out. And then you've got add a variable to the list of variables basic type. So if it's not a pointer and it's not an enum, then add the variable t into the vector, create reflection entry. Okay, fine. So you just want to handle these separately. I would say now, one, I suspect there's is enum v, and then you don't have to worry about that. But that's and it's pointer v, but that's not the point. I would say actually now you probably want to use if you've got using C++20, you probably want to use concepts. So you just be like requires. Oh, I forget the exact stood. Like not stood is pointer v t. I think, to be honest, and then you can have like, well, actually, you would probably define your own concept at the top. Template class t concept what not pointer or enum equals that, and then you could just do requires not pointer or enum. In fact, actually, even better than that, you could do not pointer or enum, and that is just so much nicer and clearer. I know it's all spelled wrong. Don't get me. Than like enable it like Xenity and enable with T is great for when that's all we had. It's just an absolute nightmare to debug and produces some of the worst error messages you'll ever see. I would highly recommend reading up on concepts because they like everything in C++, they get complex, but there's kind of a simple subset that I think will alleviate this code a little bit. And then you're going to get the hash code of the type, and then which means you have to presumably have this compiled with runtime type information. I don't know if that's an issue for you. Yeah, I would definitely look at doing concepts for all these. And then we got this create reflection entry. So where's the... So that was the header. So that's a CP file. Oh, so this basically boils all that down to this, which presumably then has the right reference type, variable name, ID, and it just pushes that back there. Nice. You won't have issues with type ID if you're compiling with RTTI, which you have to opt out of anyway, but just more curious than anything. If you want to be super modern C++, you could do this, and then that, and then you could make that const, or just push it back directly, because you are but it's kind of more stylistic. You are technically making an additional copy here. You could stood move this in. If this were, I can't imagine reflection is on your hot path. Maybe it is and you want to super optimize it, but this would elide one of the copies. Yeah, if you want to, template errors get absolutely massive. I'm trying to think if there's a really good example of how miserable template errors get. See if I can. Sorry, do. Bear with me 1 second. I think I've got a good example of this. yeah, so bring up some cobalt here. If I try and, like, I don't know, just assign a variable to a class that doesn't have a constructor or whatever, it doesn't, it's like, look, I don't have to do this, that's fine. If I try and print out a class that I've been told what to do, you get thousands and thousands of lines of compiler errors, because what the compiler is doing is it's trying. That is very much linked to that thing we said at the beginning, where C++ wants your code to compile. It's trying to find. It's going through everything it knows internally how to print out and seeing if it can convert a foo to it. So I've tried to convert it to a signed char. That didn't work. I've tried to convert it to an unsigned char. That didn't work. I've tried to convert it to a const char star. That didn't work. And it's literally because you might need that information. The compiler's gone, I'm going to tell you about every single possible conversion I've tried, and failed. And that's one of the reasons template errors get so outrageous, is because the compiler will dump on you every single thing that it tried and every bit of information it knows in the hope that some of that might be useful. But oftentimes it's not useful. And the error you want is probably either at the top, at the bottom, or somewhere in the middle. Right. Let's have a quick look at reflection utils, because I think again, lots of statics. These could potentially be free functions. It doesn't really make a difference. It would just be less typing, because you wouldn't have to do reflection util : : and again, you could probably concept up a lot of this. I don't know why this is INL. Is this some sort of code gen, maybe? Or inline? So again, nice use of const expr if here. Is reflection good practice in C++? It's good practice if you need it. Like if you need to be able to runtime inspect the structure of a class for serialization or deserialization, then yeah, it's good practice. I'd argue that it's not good practice if you don't need it, because it's a fun problem to solve, but it will probably take a lot of time and could be quite error prone. C++ 26 is getting reflection. We're getting it as part of the language. It is weird. Let's try to find the paper. C++ 26. Reflection. Right. I think the syntax they went for is strange. So you can use to select a member of a class, I think you use the char for the class and then the operator. So this little function here, given an index, will find the reflected member. So you can then use this weird like slicing syntax. It is very strange syntax. There's a really weird one. There's some good examples of like how to use it and stuff, and like, you know, making a simple tuple type out of it, but stuff. But like what is this? Like dot open square bracket colon non-static data members of open paren char decal type close index on I colon. it's just absolutely, and I will profess to not being an expert in this. I've read this paper once and then immediately forgot it. I think there's going to be some really interesting stuff that comes out of this, and then there's going to be some really, really interesting libraries that come out of this. But yeah, it's this range splicing stuff. So you can make tuple by saying dot t dot, and then like the what is to me the template pack expansion token dot members colon dot. I'm sure like a lot of thought went into this. This has been a long time coming. This has been like being on the committee's radar for like years. So I'm not bashing it. I think it probably all makes sense. I just think it's very strange. And basically it's just token soup. Like it's just absolutely like the poor Lex that has to go through all this. That is not, without coming from any other language, without spending any time looking at reflection, that is not intuitive to me. But yeah, anyway. So yeah, reflection coming soon in the next 2 years. I don't think any compilers implemented it yet, at least not in any main branch, so I've not had a chance to play around with it. But anyway, this is like another good use of context pref here. So you kind of like, I literally only have to do the specific thing for these objects. Although a lot of this looks the same. Like find component by ID, JSON value pointer.get equals go. Without again digging into it, I don't understand why these two need to be separate. Yeah, I think I prefer the refl expr function, but we went for token soup. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this up here. This was absolutely fascinating. I hope people before everyone zips off to do something else for the rest of their evening, and before I go off to have a beer and play Factorio. I hope everyone enjoyed this. I'm super keen to do more of this, so please do send in suggestions for more stuff to me to look at. I literally could sit and talk code all day, and it's actually requires minimal prep on my side, so maybe it's a winner for everyone. One thing I do want to consider doing in a new series is implementing parts of the standard library from scratch, and I don't know if people would be interested in that. So like, let's implement unique pointer, share pointer, optional vector, tuple, maybe some of the algorithms, maybe some ranges. Yeah, I don't know if that's of interest to people. Might be something fun to intersperse with these. So maybe 1 week we do a code review, the next week we pick something random from the standard, and we just like literally go to the spec, get the interface for it, and just write loads of code. So maybe we'll do that. I might try and fix Twitch first. I have 8 followers on Twitch now, so again, like I'm absolutely crushing it. I think that might be fun to do, like a new thing to do on Twitch as well as this, and we can just kind of get people involved. Because there is, whilst I don't advocate writing stuff from scratch in like production, I think there's a huge amount of educational value in doing it just for yourself for funsies. So we could all come along and people could tell me how bad my C++ library code is, and because there's loads of weird edge cases and there's so much stuff you have to kind of consider. I think it might be fun to do, at least test myself to see if I can do it live in front of like 60, 70, 80, 100 people. I think I have, before everyone goes again, if you hang around, I can gift people some memberships, which is exciting. I do like YouTube allows me to do this once a month, so congratulations to 5 random people who are here. You get membership for a month, get access to some of the past live streams, some behind the scenes content, early access to videos, etc, etc, etc. I don't push the memberships too hard, but they are there for people who can and want to, I should say. Yeah, Kieran, are you a Twitch expert? Because I am not. I don't even really watch it, despite wanting to use it as a platform. YouTube was super easy. I will reach out. I don't know how to contact you. Okay, I'll send up a smoke signal or some sort of flare, or maybe I'll just put something on the members, as you remember, on the members only community page, and reach out if I'm struggling. People do it. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm not the first person to want to stream on Twitch. I have reasonable certainty in that statement, so it must be a solved problem. So I'm sure we'll figure it out. Anyway, this office is incredibly hot. I've again sweated through a shirt, which is nothing anyone needs to know, but I feel like sharing with you. I'm gonna have a beer, play Factorio, and then I'll see you guys hopefully next week. Thanks for coming along. Catch you soon.